It's recorded. So, I, I just did this lecture, and now I'm doing it all over again because I guess it did not play. But, now to get into it again, I did put up two new assignments. One is going to be essentially how to argue. And so this one is pretty much a good 10-point, small, little, chill one about how anything that of your interest. It could be a light, it could be cinematography, it could be your favorite food, favorite color, favorite time of the year, and just talk about it. Explain why people should like it. Explain why people should do it. Explain why you think it's cool and why it's so interesting. And it's a fun little exercise that, well, fun, I guess. It's depends on the person and how they think about it, but it's a fun little exercise that I found pretty interesting during public speaking because people have two different types of writing. And so you can see how passionate they are in writing about something they're interested in because their grammar is perfect, their topic sentences are amazing, their thesis is amazing, their arguments are clear and sound and thorough, versus someone who is writing about a topic for the first time about something they're not as interested in, or about a academic topic that they have to write about, not necessarily they want to write about it. And so their topic sentences might be a little off, or like they may have grammatical errors all over the place. They may not cite sources thoroughly or correctly. And they may not argue a point, or they may not have supporting arguments or as much. And so it's a cool way to kind of just distinguish and see that. And so that's why I have this first assignment up. You'll get pretty much, as long as you talk about what you're interested in, and it's about 1 to 2 pages. Feel free to cite a source if you really want to, just to back up your facts, but otherwise it's a free 10 points essentially, as long as you just write about it. And so then the next assignment after that, though, that's when we get into the nitty gritty of things. And that one will be a little bit more formal. Not as formal as your midterm, but it's still a little bit more formal, where you will have to cite a primary or secondary source, or both, and you will have to cite it correctly. Then I can go over that in the next segment after that, when I go about the 1920s and 1930s. But today we're not talking about that, I guess. Today we are going to talk about World War One and the U.S. in World War One. So to jump right into it, essentially. Oh, by the way, guys, I do have tea. This time it is hibiscus. It's pretty good. I did not make it. Well, I did make it, but it came in just a little package I got from Kroger this morning. I digress. World War One here. So, summer 1917, Americans, they land on the shores of Europe. And so John J. Pershing, he arrives in England with his forces. At the same time, combat forces then arrive off the coast of France. And so they will be the ones in charge of, essentially, well, France will be in charge of the American Expeditionary Force. So, by January 8th of 1918, at this time, there was a Marxist coup that arose in Russia. And so, this kind of was a luck of the draw for Germany, because they had to engage in what is called the Schlieffen Plan. Now, if I can spell it, since it has been over a year since I have talked about this, the Schlieffen Plan. I believe this is what it is. So, I'm going to have different color markers. So, yeah, Germany being blue. So, Germany, you got Russia, and then France, Britain. And so, got Germany in the middle, France and Russia on the west coast, and then France and Britain on the west coast, Russia on the east coast. So you got this, the Schlieffen Plan. You can copy and paste, or pause and take a picture, whatever you want to do. But essentially, Germany, because it is in the middle of Europe, it has to fight a war on two fronts. Now, logistically, that is a complete nightmare. But is it impossible? No, it is not. You just have to go about it the right way. So, Germany right in the middle, they have to now allocate their forces over to Russia, but also over to protect its front against France and Britain. Now, the Schlieffen Plan says they have to knock either one out of the war swiftly. So Germany decides to do Russia first. So Germany invades Russia, but at the same time they luck out because Russia is being taken over by a radical Marxist group under Lenin. So Lenin then establishes let's see if I can find it, the Soviet Federative Socialist Republic. So then Russia has to back out of the war now because they are in political turmoil. They cannot keep up with the war. They have to sign an armistice. So now they are out. We'll see if I can do this upside down. So now Germany can allocate all its forces over to France and Britain. So now, under the Schlieffen Plan, theoretically, Germany can win this war now that Russia is out of the war. But it has to go through the logistical nightmare of taking all its forces from Russia now to the Western Front. So, that's where I'll get into the 14 points. Woodrow Wilson, like I said before, he was under neutrality, the neutrality ideology of the U.S., where they did not want to get into a war. Now that they're in the war because of the sinking of the Lusitania, he has to figure out a way to end it quickly before it gets even worse. So he comes up with the 14 points. The 14 points are a series of, I would say, points or basically things he takes to Germany. He wants to kind of do some talking. He wants to talk to Germany about how to end this war quickly. So he wants to, here you go. You can also copy and paste or pause and take a picture or write it down and whatever you want. But he wants to do certain things such as keep diplomacy public. He wants to make any kind of public or any kind of diplomatic relations public, so everyone can hear about it, no secrecy. Also, any maritime voyages are in, like, all the waters around Europe are free for maritime commerce. And so this was kind of iffy, especially because there is a war going on, but the water will be closed down, the sea will be closed down if there's a mutual agreement that it should be closed down as well. There's no economic barriers. Now that Europe is under different powers, it is under different economic barriers. Trade is not going on within Europe. Now, for Woodrow Wilson, for him to get rid of that barrier, now economic trade can commerce throughout Europe, or can converse throughout Europe, and now Europe can become much more profitable because of that loss of economic barrier. He also wants an arms reduction, so a country cannot make war as easily as they can now, well, as they are doing. Territory adjustments to meet everyone's needs. You got territory that will be returned to Russia, Belgium, France, Italy, Austria, and Hungary remains independent. The Sudetenland will be restored, which is like Romania, places like that, Serbia. And then the Ottoman Empire, because they are slowly starting to collapse, I believe around this point as well, their sovereignty the Islamic portion of the Ottoman Empire wants to keep their sovereignty. And then Poland wants to become autonomous, so they want to become independent as well. And then this is also the basis for the League of Nations, which then becomes the basis for NATO later on in the contemporary world, the Association of Nations. So this is the very first kind of word about kind of like grouping all the nations together against a single foreign enemy, essentially. So for anyone who's into newspapers, literature, English, or kind of like journalism, around this time as well, you got this guy, Second Lieutenant, Guy T. Viskinski. So he is going to be the editorial manager of the Stars and Stripes. The Stars and Stripes makes their first production within that same year. They are the first newspaper in history to make 1,000 copies. And so they're going to be the prime newspaper, I believe, that's going to be documenting this war and stuff at home and kind of like raising general morale. about or driving the home front in terms of how they think about this war going forward. And so by March, Germany then begins their final offensive at the Western Front. So then they pull all their forces over, and we got this little laser pointer too for the cat, but now I get to use it for the class. And so you got Germany right there, you got France, and you also got Britain backing up France on this portion as well. There's a giant line, infantry or a trench line that lines France. That lines France. And so you got France and Britain. And then you also got this large trench line along the German front as well. Germany. So you got French forces and British forces all along this line. And you also got German. You got German line on this side. So this offensive is called the Kaiserschlacht, or Kaiser's War. And so I will write that down actually, just to help you guys out. Kaiserschlacht. And so you can call this the Spring Offensive. You also call it the Ludendorff Offensive because Erich Ludendorff is leading this massive force. You could call it a Kaiser War or just Kaiserschlacht, whichever you prefer. Kaiser's War. There we go. So, there you go. Now, his idea is that because Germany now has all its forces on the Western Front, he can now make an attack through the forces line. And so by doing so, right through here, see if the marker will work. There you go. Right through here, he'll then split the British and French forces in half. So now if I redraw this line, it will go in between. There you go. So it'll make kind of bulge in the line. Now if you create that bulge, now you got Britain down here, or France, and then you got Britain or France up here. Britain or France or up here. There you go. So now, if I redraw this now you will see how horrible of a situation this will be for the Allies. There you go. Yeah, look at that now. So, now that you got this bulge, you got the Germans now coming around to either side on their flanks, and then you got both the British and French forces completely blocked off from any kind of support or reinforcements. And so that is Erich Ludendorff's strategy to completely decimating the Allied forces with the Kaiserschlacht. So this will be 4 different battles that will occur over the lasting months of the war. And so the first one will be Operation Michael. The second one will be Georgette, which will be a culmination of 2 different St. George battles. You also get Blucher York, BLUCHER-YORCK, which I will write down for you guys. And then also Gneisenau, which will be, of course, Operation Gneisenau, which will also be the Argonne Offensive or Meuse-Argonne Offensive. So all of these operations, these also have battles associated with them that you guys may remember, especially a lot of gamers who are in the class as well, who have played Battlefield, which I am an avid Battlefield gamer. If you guys got Battlefield 6, hit me up. But Battlefield 1 is the World War I version, which has the Kaiserschlacht DLC, which has a lot of these battles in there. So if you guys want a more virtual representation of the battles, feel free to go out and buy Battlefield 1 and play it, because they have this. But then you'll definitely need a DLC or the PlayStation, PlayStation Plus, whatever. Georgette. And then Blucher York. And then Gneisenau. Or Gneisenau. Gneisenau. I think it's going to be listening to Gneisenau. So, St. George 1. St. George 1. And then St. George 2. You also got Michael, okay, and then it's now York. There you go. So, with St. George 1 and 2, you also got the Battle of Lys. And then you also got the battle over in Hasenbrook. And so, Hasenbrook. Brock. And then Battle of Lys. There you go. There you go. Battle of Marne. Let's see if I can put this in here real quick for you guys. Below. I am off. So it will be below. There we go. Put this down here. Then this one's gonna be Amens, right? I think so. Yeah, there we go. And then Somme. So going forward in your historical education, Battle of Somme, you will hear a lot about these battles later on, or you may not hear about them ever again, depending on the teacher and depending on the subject matter you wish to go into later in life. So here's your operations. Feel free to take a picture again, copy and paste, pause, and write it down if you want to. But second Battle of the Somme will be Operation Michael. You also got Hasenbrook, and then also Battle of Lys with St. George 1 and St. George 2 under Operation Georgette. Blucher York will be the Battle of the Marne, which I'm sure you guys probably have heard about as well. And then also, Gneisenau will be Belleau Wood, which is another famous Marine operation, which anyone who's in the armed forces or thinking about going into the military, especially the Marines, you will definitely have to know about the Battle of Belleau Wood, because I'm pretty sure, 90% sure, they will either quiz, ask, or demand that you know about that. So, going forward, there we go. Now, starting with, starting with Michael. So, March 21st, the Germans led a surprise attack. And so, this surprise attack actually was complete success. And so they used artillery, and then they also used a mix of phosgene and chlorine gas mixed with tear gas. And so chlorine gas and phosgene gas and stuff like that. Chemical warfare is a big thing at this point. You also get stuff that's concerned, you call it mustard gas and stuff like that. Essentially kind of makes your eyes burn, makes it hard to breathe. It also takes away just your ability to actually breathe and ventilate normally. Chlorine essentially attacks your airway system and basically just burns it completely. You end up collapsing within seconds, really. And then, with that being said, they also use the Luftstreitkräfte. And so, let's see if I spell it right. Luftstreitkräfte. So if anyone can definitely deduce what that is, because this is the predecessor to the Luftwaffe. So the Luftwaffe was the German Air Force. This is the German Air Service. And so these guys, in conjunction with the infantry and artillery, completely decimated the British. Britain had 30,000 casualties within one day, pushed their line back, and ultimately the French had to reinforce the British line to keep them from falling back. The Germans ended up pushing in another 4 miles from their line into the Allied line. And so then by this point as well, the Germans were then halted east of Amiens. So the Battle of Amiens will be another battle within Operation Michael that you guys can learn about more so. But afterwards, St. George in April, St. George 1st, was another attack that they had. Germans led the attack northwards. And so they went up north between Armentières and the Canal of La Basse. And so that is towards Hassenbrook. So you get the Battle of that. St. George II was also a simultaneous attack that was launched the next day southwest of Ypres, or of Press, Ypres. I always say Ypres, but I might not be it, but I have to check the spelling on that one, or the pronunciation. And so that's also known as the Battle of Lys. And so with that being said, Britain pushed another 10 miles back, and then France, of course, had to reinforce them again. And they halted the German advance. Now, May. By this point, 300,000 British soldiers are dead or wounded. German victory is highly likely at this point, but they are running low on resources. They have to keep their momentum going in order to officially end the war. Now, that's where we get to Blucher York. Ludendorff, he attacked across the Aisne River onto the Marne, between Chateau Thierry and Dormans. The 1st Division under the U.S. Armed Forces, they end up pushing the Germans back at Cantigny. So that's their first kind of baptism by fire at that point. And so, afterwards, the Germans tried westward. Now, if you look at the map behind me, guess what is westward of that line? Paris. Germans, if they control Paris, they control France. If they control France, they beat the Allies out. If they beat the Allies out, they win the war. Now, they cannot do that, so the Allies counterattack. Now, Belleau Wood, also called Bois de Belleau. So, if anyone who is into the French language, that is another term for it. So, the 4th Marine Brigade, under the 2nd U.S. Division, they are in conjunction with the French and British forces under Captain Lloyd Williams. So Captain Lloyd Williams also coined a famous term at that battle, which a lot of you military people will hopefully you guys know about this one. And so he gets to the battle. He gets up to the French and British officers, and they're like, we are honestly low on resources. We may not be able to hold out. The Germans are pushing back. They're asking us to surrender, and Captain Lloyd Williams is like, retreat? Hell, I just got here. And so that's kind of a cool little fun little term that he did say. So honestly, if you guys want to remember that'd be a cool little bar fact you guys can spit out every now and again, especially on the basketball or football team or anything. You can just be like, shoot, lose? We just got here. And so Belleau was held by the Germans, but they failed to hold it because of artillery. So the lack of artillery on both sides, actually. So then under the Marines were kind of disorganized, and so the French were supposed to reinforce them with artillery, but they didn't. The Marines ended up marching into Belleau, and they got absolutely decimated. 1,100 Marines ended up dying in one day, but ultimately they ended up holding out somehow, some way. Ludendorff, to their luck, ended up just straight up running out of resources. He's just like, I can't keep this up. So he backs away. The Allies ended up capturing Belleau Wood, and they forced the Germans into a retreat. This is just 40 miles from Paris at this point. At this point also, 700,000 total Germans are either wounded or killed in action, and another 850,000 Allies. That includes French, British, Italian, and Portuguese. They're all killed or wounded. Another 10,000 U.S. are killed or wounded. And so this is a giant victory for the Allies at this point. And so now the Allies have the momentum to push back. which by September, this is exactly what happens. The U.S. leads their first singular offensive against Germany in the 100 Days Offensive. So the 100 Days Offensive, especially, is pretty much an offensive from September till the end of the war. And so it's on St. Mihiel, Mihiel. And so because of the fact that they are in a foreign place, they're not well versed in the geography. They're also not well versed in cooperating with a foreign force, such as the French and British. This is the first time they've ever had to do so. And so a lot of the coordination was off, but they ended up succeeding through sheer numbers. So they succeeded in pushing the German forces back from the Verdun line. This was pretty much the first widespread use of Army air service by William Billy Mitchell, which he'll also come up because he was the advocate for what we call that, strategic bombing further on in the war. So after the war, he also advocated that bombers will become the primary force to win wars further on. Also, George Patton, he became the tank commander. He led a tank assault. So this coordination between infantry, armor, and air forces ultimately pushed the Germans back. More than 1 million foot soldiers ended up in that front at this time now. So by September, over 1 million U.S. soldiers were now over in Europe. Now, because of this, Germans ended up retreating. And then by the end of it, the U.S. ended up losing 7,000 people, while Germany lost estimated 17,500. Another 10,000 ended up becoming POWs. Now, from September 26th to November 11th, remember those days? Because that is the Meuse-Argonne offensive. That is the last great offensive of the war, which was conducted by American and French forces. Now, they wanted to engage in a pincer attack. So the pincer attack is a little bit different than what the Germans wanted to do at the beginning with the spring offensive. It's a little bit different because it now encompasses two different forces. So the Germans, so a good way to remember this is that, so Meuse-Argonne offensive. And then you just draw a line through the middle of it, because the U.S., they were just west of the Meuse River. The French were just west of the Argonne forest. And what they wanted to do was split the German forces. Split the attack between them. So there you go. There you go. So, U.S. under Meuse, French under Argonne, and then what they were going to do is put Germany between the two of them. So that's a good way to kind of remember how the whole battle progressed. And so, the U.S., they first surprise attacked the German line right along the western side of the river. So the Germans were just, I believe, if my mind serves me correctly, they were just west of the forest, or they were just outside of the forest. And so the U.S., they attacked the German forces. They ended up driving them back into the forest, into the Argonne forest. And so while they were in retreat, the French met the Germans right inside the forest as well. And so, let me put this into perspective here. Oh. So the town of Argonne is in the middle of the forest. Very wooded area. So then France was over here. Oh. There you go. French. And then U.S. Germany. All right, cool. So how this all worked out was that U.S. ended up attacking Germany from the west. So here you go. I'm going to put this down here. So you're attacking Germany from the west. Now, Germany had to retreat back into the town of Argonne. But at the same time, France, also from the west, came from the opposite end. So now, Germany is in a battle between the U.S. to the, I guess, northwest, and then France to the southwest. So there you go. That's your pincer attack. They completely decimated the German infantry or German forces, and they end up pushing the Germans back another 30 miles, with the U.S. stopping just 10 miles, and then the French either driving them back another 20 after that. And so by this time, because of disorganization, because of sheer number of men that was involved in this, another 120,000 U.S. casualties occurred, with another 70,000 under French. Another little cool tidbit, the Buffalo Soldiers also participated in this. The Buffalo Soldiers, they are another all-black infantry unit that participated within the Civil War. They also participated in other wars or other battles in between. And they also participated under the 92nd and 93rd Regiment for the French, if my mind serves me correctly, in this battle during the Meuse-Argonne offensive. Now, by this time, Germany is like on its last legs. It's on the retreat. It is on the defensive now. And so on November 11th, now remember this because it's going to be a very important fact that a lot of teachers tend to emphasize with this war, is that the armistice was to be signed on the 11th month of the 11th day at the 11th hour. So just remember that, 11, 11, 11. That's what it is. And so literally this offensive, they fight up until literally the 11th hour. So I do have a brief audio snippet of the artillery strikes that were happening on November 11th, just before 11 o'clock. And it's complete chaos. And then at 11 o'clock, all the battles cease. All the bombs cease, all the artillery ceases, the war ends. Germany's on the retreat. Germany has signed an armistice now. Or the armistice happens, everyone stops and goes home. The British and the U.S. now enter Germany, and then the Paris Peace Conference happens. This is the latter part of 1918. And so the League of Nations is born. At this point, the U.S. and all allied forces want to come up with a way to protect each other from any foreign enemy, or both foreign and abroad, or both domestic and abroad. And this is going to be the precursor to, of course, NATO. But for now, League of Nations is born. Now, the U.S. and the Allies all signed the Treaty of Versailles. So the Treaty of Versailles was complete demoralization to the German people. And so the Treaty of Versailles, I'm going to write this down for you guys too. So now I'm not going to highlight all points because the main one I want to do is Germany. But essentially, all territory is to be returned to the Allies or to its prospective country. All territory returned. Germany also has to pay reparations back to the countries that it attacked, especially France, Britain, especially France, because it completely decimated France and Russia. And so, all territory returned. And then war reparations. And then they also have to get rid of their military and their navy and their air force. So, no war development. There you go. These are the main points that you'll see. And so there's definitely way more, but these are the highlights that I want to do for this one. Because with another guy also blames the German political party with accepting this guy by the name of Adolf Hitler. And so he found that this was a slap in the face to the German people, and then he goes on a war path to try and rise up against the political parties in Germany at this time to take charge, because he thinks they are responsible for accepting this. But I'm pushing forward. Now, to come back to it, the Treaty of Versailles, big slap in the face. Germany can't make a military anymore. They can't wage war anymore. The U.S. also signs a bill of guarantee. This also protects France from any attack by Germany or any other power. Also, in 1921, so this is 1919, but by 1921, the Treaty of Versailles still hasn't been ratified yet. How come? Well, this guy, this critic, newspaper critic by name of Henry Lodge, he rises up against Woodrow Wilson because he believes that the Treaty of Versailles was unconstitutional and that the Senate, they believe that Woodrow Wilson went against their concerns and ended up wanting to sign the Treaty of Versailles before they had a chance to tear it down. Well, now that they do, they tore it down. So the U.S. had to do a separate treaty signed with Germany, Austria, and Hungary in order to complete this whole entire treaty in order for the war to officially just be done, to end. And so now that is the end. Well, that's the beginning of the 1920s. So now from 1920 to 1930, I will get into kind of the social aspect back in America and kind of that the fall of the golden age. And so now you're going to go from, all this war preparation and rise in economy and industry to the eventual collapse of the 1930s. Now, that will be the next segment in the next lecture later on. But for now, I'm going to stop there at the 1920s, and then just to wrap it all up, there's a lot of innovation that you will see in this next chapter. You're going to have like aircraft races because most of the aircraft have been developed from stress skin wooden frame biplanes to triplanes with greater maneuverability, and now you get these all metal biplane or monoplanes with bigger engines. And so you're going to get that transition in your Air Force. You also get transitions in military weaponry. You got the interrupter gear for aircraft that can shoot through propellers that you've seen in World War One. And now you get the aircraft with more than just two guns. Now they shoot intermittently, and you can also angle them in now. And then you also get, like I said, faster engines. You also get better weaponry like the Lewis machine gun. You also get other things like the Mosin Nagant was mass produced, and so I got that, and I got that rifle, but I don't think I'm allowed to show you guys, but I can definitely check to make sure because it is a historical weapon. But apart from that, you get a lot of changes. You also get the first introduction of females in the armed forces at this point in time too, because they also used females to do wiretapping, I believe. And then you also get the advocacy for African Americans to be heavily used within the armed forces at this point as well, going into the 1930s and of course 1940s. So apart from that, I'm going to stop there because I'm not going to spoil anything, but essentially enjoy your snow day in or go out and enjoy it. It's pretty chill out. It seems like, literally, it's chill out. But just go out and have fun or stay in and have fun. Stay warm, stay frosty, do whatever you want. But I am out.